Why do millions of strangers cry when Taylor Swift wins an award? Think about it. The spotlight isn't on them. The applause isn't for them. The trophy doesn't sit in their living room. And yet, when Taylor clutches that microphone, voice trembling with gratitude, entire stadiums of people feel their own chests tighten, their own eyes water, as if they've just been recognized too. That's not just fandom. That's not just liking someone's music. It's something deeper, something almost primal, a hidden bond that makes her victories feel like ours. Every artist has fans, but what Taylor taps into is different. It isn't about idolizing a distant figure. It's about feeling like she's telling your story, carrying your scars, and then somehow alchemizing them into triumph. When she stands tall, it feels like she's lifting you with her. Think about the last time you saw her win. Maybe it was the Grammys. Maybe it was one of those surprise award moments where she seemed genuinely stunned. Notice what you felt. That rush in your chest wasn't just admiration. It was ownership. You felt like part of you was up there too, being validated, being heard. And that raises the real question. How does one woman, who most of her fans have never met, manage to tap so directly into our sense of identity, belonging, and even justice? Why do her struggles feel personal and her wins feel shared? The answer lies in a combination of psychology, storytelling, and survival. It's the invisible thread she's been weaving for years. Through lyrics, through battles, through silence, and through moments that shocked even her closest followers. And once you see those threads, you'll never look at her wins, or your own, the same way again. You don't really know Taylor Swift, and yet millions of people swear they do. They feel like they've grown up with her, like they understand her moods, like they could guess what she'd say in a private conversation. That's the heart of what psychologists call a parasocial relationship, a one-sided connection where one person feels a deep emotional bond with someone who doesn't even know they exist. Now, parasocial connections aren't new. They existed back in the days of Elvis and the Beatles, but Taylor has mastered them in a way that feels almost scientific. She doesn't just release music. She releases pieces of herself. Instead of abstract lyrics, she gives diary entries set to melody. Instead of vague love songs, she names names, paints details, and invites fans into intimate corners of her life. Think of it. You don't just hear about heartbreak in a generic way. You hear about the scarf left at your sister's house. You hear about dancing in the refrigerator light. These are hyper-specific images, but strangely, that's what makes them universal. Fans don't just listen to her stories. They insert their own lives into the spaces she leaves open. Her words become mirrors, reflecting back experiences you didn't think anyone else saw. And here's where the connection deepens. Taylor doesn't hide her growth. Fans have watched her evolve, from a teenager writing about high school crushes to a woman navigating betrayal, power struggles, and the raw weight of fame. Every new era feels like a chapter in a shared diary, one you've been reading for over a decade. So when she wins, it's not just a pop star being recognized. It's your friend, the one you've walked beside since adolescence, finally getting what she deserves. But this intimacy comes with its own power. When she smiles, fans feel joy. When she cries, millions cry with her. And when she's wronged, her followers feel personally attacked. This bond explains why even the smallest slight against her can ignite entire online wars. Fans aren't just defending a celebrity, they're defending themselves. What's fascinating is that Taylor knows how to feed this bond without ever making it feel fake. Take her habit of leaving Easter eggs in lyrics, outfits, and even social media posts. Fans hunt for these clues like messages left just for them, as if she's whispering directly into their lives. It's not just entertainment. It's a relationship ritual, one that constantly reaffirms the illusion of closeness. And this illusion is sticky. Studies show that parasocial relationships can trigger the same brain responses as real friendships. When Taylor wins, your brain releases dopamine almost as if you had achieved something. That's why the emotional hit feels so personal, so real. because in your neural pathways, it is. But there's another layer. When someone's bond with a star is that strong, the victories and the defeats don't stay on stage. They spill into the fans' own sense of identity. Taylor isn't just an artist. She's a symbol, a stand-in for every time you felt overlooked, doubted, or underestimated. When she proves people wrong, so do you. And yet, as powerful as this connection is, it's only the beginning. Because if the bond explains why we care, the next step explains why we ache. Why her lyrics don't just sound familiar, but feel like they've been stolen straight from our hearts. Imagine listening to a song for the first time and suddenly realizing the lyrics sound like they've been pulled directly from your own life. That's the Taylor Swift effect. Her music doesn't just entertain. It disarms you. It drags private emotions you thought you had hidden and lays them out in a melody that the whole world sings. Taylor has built her career on what psychologists call emotional resonance. She takes feelings that are messy, contradictory, and often unspoken and translates them into words that stick. Heartbreak, jealousy, regret, hope, redemption. They're all there, raw and unfiltered. And when you hear them, you're not just listening to her story, you're reliving yours. Think about All Too Well. It's not just about a breakup. It's about remembering every detail so vividly that the memory itself hurts more than the loss. Who hasn't had that moment where a smell, a song, or a place drags you back into emotions you swore you'd outgrown? The scarf she mentions might not exist in your story, but you have your own symbol. A jacket, a song, a restaurant. Her detail invites you to overlay your own heartbreak onto her words. Or take The Archer. It's not just a pop song. It's a confession of insecurity. I wake in the night. I pace like a ghost. That line alone mirrors the kind of restless nights so many people endure but rarely admit. Suddenly, a private, lonely moment feels shared, validated, and less shameful. This is why fans don't just listen to Taylor's music. They cling to it. Her catalog becomes a map of their own inner lives. The Fearless era captures young love and reckless hope. Red embodies heartbreak and confusion. 1989 feels like reinvention. Folklore whispers about isolation, nostalgia, and the longing for simpler times. And now, in her later work, you see the wisdom of someone who has survived betrayal, public scrutiny, and private battles. Wisdom her fans borrow when they don't have their own. The emotional echo works both ways. Her joy feels like yours, and her pain reopens wounds you thought had closed. That's why her wins carry so much weight. When a song that once cradled you during heartbreak wins Album of the Year, it feels like your heartbreak is finally acknowledged, rewarded, and elevated to art. Her award becomes a medal pinned onto your chest, validating the nights you spent crying with those same lyrics on repeat. This mirror effect is amplified by the way she writes in you language. Even when she's telling a personal story, she frames it so it feels universal. You call me up again just to break me like a promise. The you could be anyone. It could be your ex, your parent, your boss, your friend. By using direct address, she collapses the distance between her world and yours, making the song less about her and more about you. But here's the twist. The mirror isn't always comfortable. Sometimes it forces you to face emotions you'd rather bury. That's why fans often describe her albums as therapy. Because therapy isn't just soothing, it's also confronting. It pulls hidden pain into the light. That discomfort is part of the healing, and it's what makes her music addictive, and this isn't accidental. Taylor has said in interviews that she writes songs as a way to process emotions she can't otherwise deal with. In other words, the music is born out of her survival mechanism. But the moment it's released, it becomes a survival mechanism for millions of other people too. This is why her wins feel communal. Because when she's celebrated for writing those songs, it feels like you are being celebrated for enduring those same emotions. When the music industry validates her pain as art, it validates your pain as meaningful too. But emotional resonance isn't the only reason her wins feel like ours. There's another dimension, one where the stakes aren't just emotional, but material. A battle where she wasn't just fighting for her art, but for control, ownership, and power itself. And when she won there, it felt like a revolution. It's one thing to sing about heartbreak. It's another to live through a betrayal so massive it shakes an entire industry. For Taylor Swift, the heartbreak wasn't just personal, it was professional. And when she fought back, fans felt like they were a part of a revolution. The story begins with ownership. In 2019, Taylor's first 6 albums, the songs that made her a household name, were sold to Scooter Braun, a powerful manager in the industry, without her consent. To most people, that sounded like just another business deal. But for her fans, it was war. Why? Because those albums weren't just business assets. They were memories. They were the songs fans had cried to, celebrated with, grown up alongside. To see them treated like poker chips in a corporate trade was infuriating. Taylor herself called it her worst-case scenario. Imagine pouring your soul into a diary only to have someone else lock it away and charge you to read it. That's how it felt. Not just to her, but to the millions who had bonded with those records. And here's where the fight became something bigger. Taylor didn't just accept the deal. She refused to stay silent. Instead, she launched a bold, almost unthinkable plan to re-record her old music and release it again as Taylor's versions. To outsiders, it might have looked petty, but to fans it was genius. It was her way of saying, if you steal my work, I'll take it back, and I'll do it louder than ever. Fans rallied. They stopped streaming the old versions and poured their support into the re-recordings. Every time Taylor's version outperformed the originals, it felt like a collective victory. Fans weren't just listening to music, they were boycotting, protesting, and reclaiming something that had been taken from them. And the plan worked. By 2025, Taylor had successfully reclaimed her catalog, securing ownership of her legacy. It was one of the most stunning power moves in modern music history. And here's the part that made it feel personal. For fans, it wasn't just about Taylor's business win. It was about their own lives, because how many people have felt powerless at some point? How many have had their work, their ideas, or even their identity stolen or undervalued? Watching Taylor flip the script showed her fans that you don't have to stay powerless. You can fight back, and you can win. Her battle blurred the line between art and activism. Suddenly, listening to Fearless, Taylor's version, wasn't just nostalgia. It was resistance. It was a way for fans to say, we stand with you. We choose you. We will not let them silence you. Every stream became a tiny act of rebellion. And this is where her wins transcended music. They became lessons. Lessons about control, about resilience, about refusing to let others write your story. Her fans weren't just celebrating her, they were celebrating themselves. Each headline about her taking back ownership felt like validation for everyone who's ever been underestimated, dismissed, or told they didn't deserve power. But battles like these don't end cleanly. For every victory, there's a new threat. And for Taylor, those threats came not only from boardrooms, but from darker corners of the internet. Places where identity, privacy, and safety are constantly under attack. Every hero's story has a villain. For Taylor Swift, those villains haven't always worn obvious masks. Some hide in contracts, others in headlines, and lately, some lurk in the cold algorithms of the internet. In early 2024, something disturbing happened. Deepfake images of Taylor, explicit AI-generated fabrications spread across social media like wildfire. They weren't real, but they looked real enough to spark outrage, humiliation, and concern. Fans were horrified, not just because of what was done to her, but because of what it symbolized. A world where anyone's face, anyone's body, can be stolen and weaponized. For Taylor, it was a violation of identity. For her fans, it felt personal, because if it can happen to one of the most powerful women in music, what chance does anyone else have? The fight wasn't just about Taylor's reputation. It was about safety in the digital age. And when she stood firm, demanding accountability and calling for stricter controls on AI abuse, fans felt she was fighting for them too. But the threats didn't stop at technology. In 2025, her name surfaced in legal papers tied to a lawsuit involving Blake Lively and director Justin Baldoni. A subpoena suggested she might be called as a witness. Her team dismissed it as tabloid clickbait, but the fact that her name alone could drag headlines into chaos showed the precarious nature of her fame. At any moment, her personal connections can be twisted into narratives she never asked to be part of. And here's the bigger truth. These constant threats, whether digital or legal, create a climate of siege. Taylor is always on defense, always bracing for the next blow. And fans, they feel that weight too. When someone attacks her, it's as if they've attacked an entire community. That's why her fanbase doesn't just support her. They mobilize like an army. They flood timelines, correct misinformation, and push back against hate. To them, protecting Taylor is protecting a piece of themselves. But this protection isn't just about loyalty. It's about justice. Many fans see in Taylor a reflection of their own battles with being silenced, disrespected, or violated. So when she confronts these threats head-on, it's not only inspiring, it's healing. Her survival becomes proof that theirs is possible too. And yet, the irony is sharp. The very bond that makes her wins feel so personal is also what makes her vulnerable. The stronger the connection, the more the world demands access. Every silence becomes suspicious. Every absence becomes a statement. Every rumor becomes a storm. Which leads us to one of the strangest paradoxes in her career. Sometimes, it isn't her presence that makes headlines, but her absence. And when she doesn't show up, fans feel it like a physical loss. For most celebrities, silence is forgettable. If they skip an event, nobody notices, but when Taylor Swift doesn't show up, the absence feels louder than applause. Her fans don't just track her music. They track her movements, her choices, her silences. And sometimes, those silences speak volumes. Take the 2025 American Music Awards. Fans expected her to dominate the night. After all, her latest re-recordings were breaking streaming records, and her global tour had redefined live performance. But when the cameras panned the audience, the seat where she should have been was empty. Rumors flew immediately. Why wasn't she there? Was it personal? Political? Strategic? The mystery deepened when clips surfaced online suggesting that audience cheers for her were muted during the live broadcast. Whether intentional or not, the damage was done. Swifties lit up social media with claims of a rigged spectacle. In their eyes, it wasn't just an award show snub. It was an attempt to minimize her influence, to silence her presence. And here's the strange part. Her absence only magnified her power. The AMAs trended not because of who attended, but because of who didn't. Every article, every debate circled back to Taylor. By staying away, she became the story. This isn't new in her career. Taylor has long understood the weaponization of silence. Think back to her hiatus in 2016 after the infamous feud with Kanye West and Kim Kardashian. For months, she disappeared from the spotlight, fueling speculation that her career might be over. But when she returned with reputation, the silence became part of the narrative. The snake emojis, the tabloid hits, the online mockery. All of it was swallowed and spit back out as art. The absence wasn't weakness, it was incubation. Fans understand this pattern now. They know her silences aren't empty. They're charged. They're clues. They're moments of recalibration before the next storm. That's why even her absences feel personal to them. When she pulls back, fans feel the void. They interpret it, defend it, and even weave it into their own lives as lessons in patience, resilience, and comeback energy. But there's a darker side too. Her absence can trigger anxiety in her most devoted followers. If she doesn't post, doesn't appear, doesn't perform, fans start projecting their own fears onto her. Is she okay? Is she struggling? The silence becomes a canvas for collective worry. And yet, that worry only reinforces the intimacy of the bond. She doesn't need to speak to be heard. She only needs to disappear. What this reveals is staggering. Taylor's presence has become so ingrained in the cultural fabric that even her absence creates headlines, debates, and emotional fallout. She's one of the few artists who can command attention without saying a word. And fans, they don't just notice, they internalize. Her decision not to show up becomes a mirror for their own experiences of withdrawal, rejection, or self-preservation. So when she's missing, it doesn't feel like she abandoned them. It feels like she's modeling something they need to learn. The power of walking away, the strength of saying no, the dignity of choosing silence when the noise is too much. And when she returns, that return feels like a personal triumph, as if the fan who worried, who waited, who defended her during the silence, is rewarded with the joy of seeing her rise again. Her absences prove one thing. She doesn't just win on stage, she wins in the spaces between. But the deepest question remains. Why do her wins, her fights, even her silences feel so much like ours? Why do we project ourselves so completely onto her story? To answer that, we have to turn the mirror back onto the fans themselves. When Taylor Swift wins, it doesn't feel like just another celebrity moment. It feels like something that happened to you. The tears, the chills, the rush of pride. They aren't abstract admiration. They're deeply personal. But why? The answer lies in identity. Fans don't just watch Taylor, they merge with her. Over the years, they've threaded her music into their own life stories. First dances, breakups, late-night drives, lonely moments with headphones. Her lyrics become memory markers. They stop belonging solely to her and start belonging to everyone who lived through them. So when those songs are validated with awards, headlines, or cultural impact, fans feel validated too. Their pain, their love, their growth is being honored on the biggest stages in the world. This explains why Swifties often describe her wins in first-person language. We did it. We won Album of the Year. It's not delusion. It's emotional truth. Psychologists call this vicarious achievement, the feeling that someone else's success reflects your own value. And in Taylor's case, it's amplified by the parasocial bond. She's not just a star in the distance. She feels like a friend, a diary, a reflection. But it goes deeper. Taylor represents something many people crave: redemption. She's been doubted, mocked, betrayed, and underestimated, just like countless fans in their own lives. When she climbs back from a scandal, when she reclaims her music, when she dominates an industry that once tried to silence her, she embodies the possibility of turning wounds into weapons. Her resilience becomes proof that yours can matter too. That's why even fans who don't know every lyric still root for her. They see a symbol, a woman who turned humiliation into art, a creative who turned powerlessness into ownership, a human being who faced down hate and stood taller for it. Watching her win is like watching the version of yourself you wish you could be. Fearless, unapologetic, victorious. And then there's the community effect. Taylor's wins aren't experienced in isolation. They're shared, amplified, multiplied across millions of screens. Twitter threads, TikTok reactions, Reddit debates. Each fan sees themselves reflected in the reactions of others. It's a feedback loop of belonging. You felt proud, and then you saw thousands of others who felt the same. Suddenly, it's not just your win, it's our win. And humans crave that sense of unity, especially in a fractured world. This is also why her losses sting so much. When she's snubbed, disrespected, or attacked, fans feel personally insulted. It's not just Taylor being wronged, it's the fan who lived through that song, who healed because of it, now being told it doesn't matter. That's why the stakes feel so high. Every victory or defeat ricochets through her followers like an electric current. But here's the twist. As powerful as this projection is, it carries a hidden danger. Because living through someone else's wins can also distract from building your own. The risk of parasocial closeness is forgetting that Taylor's victories don't replace yours. They can inspire you, fuel you, give you hope, but they're still hers. And maybe that's the lesson embedded in this strange bond. When her fans cheer, when they cry, when they say, "We won," what they're really doing is reminding themselves that victory is possible. That recognition, power, and redemption aren't locked away for the few. They can be chased, they can be earned, and they can be real in your own life. Her wins feel like your own because they've always been about more than trophies. They're about survival, about fighting back, about finding a voice. And every fan who feels that in their bones is already halfway to writing their own victory story. So why do Taylor Swift's wins feel like your own? Because somewhere along the way, her story became braided into yours. Every lyric, every silence, every battle. They stopped being hers alone and became a shared language between artist and audience. Her triumphs validate the scars you carry. Her awards honor the heartbreak you endured. Her comebacks prove that even when you're underestimated, written off, or betrayed, there's a way to rise higher than anyone thought possible. That's the secret power of parasocial connection. You don't just watch a celebrity from afar. You weave them into your identity. And Taylor has been a master weaver. She's given you diary pages disguised as songs, vulnerability wrapped in melodies, and resilience displayed in every public fight. So when she wins, it feels like the part of you that was fragile, overlooked, or voiceless finally won too. But here's the thought that lingers. What if those wins you feel secondhand could become firsthand? What if the pride you get from watching her career could be redirected into your own? Because the truth is, you don't need a Grammy stage to claim victory. You need courage. You need persistence. You need the willingness to rewrite your story, just like she re-recorded hers. Think about it. Taylor could have walked away when her masters were sold. She could have stayed silent when the world mocked her. Instead, she fought back, not just for herself, but for every fan who ever felt robbed of something they deserved. And now, her legacy isn't just music. It's proof that taking ownership of your life is always possible. That's why her victories should feel like more than just entertainment. They should feel like a spark, a challenge, a reminder that the wins you crave in your own life are closer than you think. And here's where you come in. You've stayed with me through this whole story, which already says something about you. You're not just a passive listener. You're someone who's searching for meaning, for connection, for a mirror that reflects your own resilience back at you. So let me ask you, what win are you chasing right now? What story do you need to reclaim? Drop it in the comments, not just because engagement helps the channel, but because speaking it out loud is the first step to owning it. And who knows? Maybe someone else scrolling through will see your words and realize they're not alone. That's how communities are built. That's how change starts. And before you go, here's a wild fact. Only about 0.4% of people who watch these videos are actually subscribed. If you've made it this far, you're clearly not just skimming, you're invested. So let's make this official. Hit subscribe, and let's win together. Taylor Swift's victories remind us that survival can turn into success, that silence can become strategy, and that even the most painful chapters can be rewritten. Her wins feel like yours, because in a way, they are. But the next win, that one doesn't have to belong to anyone else. It can be yours, and when it comes, I promise, it'll feel even better.